Okay, it is 1:30 right now, and we want to welcome everybody to the webinar, the NETL webinar on fossil energies and carbon management's Minority Serving Institutions program. My name is Maria Reedpath, and I am a Federal Project Manager at the National Energy Technology Laboratory, or NETL. Next, please. So we have several objectives for this webinar. Principally, we want to assist the officials at the schools, at the minority serving institutions, to increase the awareness on the program that NETL manages, called Historically Black Colleges and Universities and Other Minority Institutions program, and all the available opportunities that it offers. We are going to present the context for these opportunities, what NETL is, its missions, and priorities in general, and then about cross-cutting research in particular. We will be reviewing NETL's engagement with MSIs and their purpose. And we will be briefing the participants on how to do business with the federal government and how to effectively respond to NETL funding opportunity announcements, or FOAs. Next. Some housekeeping instructions. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted shortly on the NETL website. So you have some instructions to go to News and Events tab on the upper right-hand side and click Conference Proceedings. This presentation will also be available as a PDF file. If you're using computer audio, you may experience audio issues depending on your internet connection. So we recommend that you use the phone call option. Your telephones or your voice access, your audios are muted. Your voice access is muted, and we will not be able to hear any questions you may have. So please use the chat question box that came up when you logged onto the GoToWebinar for your questions. All questions will be answered if we have time after all the presentations have been made. However, questions that are not answered during the webinar will be posted along with the answers at the same location as the webinar recording. Next. So what are the goals of NETL's HBCU-OMI program? We want to reach the U.S. minority students from underrepresented and structurally marginalized communities. We want for minority students to benefit from and contribute to world-class research activities by participating in key areas that impact the nation and potentially the world. We want minority students to have the opportunity to be involved in fossil energy carbon management mission goals for sustainable and net zero greenhouse gas future. And we want for minority students to develop and hone cutting-edge and translatable skill sets. Next, please. This is the agenda. We have 5 parts, and then it's time for questions and answers, hopefully at the end. Again, I'm Maria Reedpath. We will have an overview of NETL, the University Training and Research Program at NETL. There will be an overview of the Mickey Leland Energy Fellowship Program. Next, they will talk about doing business with the federal government. Finally, there will be a section responding to the areas of interest or topics. Next, please. If you have any questions, there's a couple of contacts listed here and some other sites that you might visit for information. Next. Now, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sidney Cradle, who is the technology manager for the University Training and Research Center.
Thanks, Maria. So, hello and welcome, everybody. As Maria said, my name is Sidney Cradle. I'm the technology manager for the Cross-Cutting Research University Training and Research Program here at NETL. I'm excited and very happy to be here for our annual HBCU and OMI webinar. I've been looking forward to this event for a while. So I'm pleased, to be here today and be able to share a little bit more information about our program and also to orient you as to the funding opportunities that are available to you overall. So we're also gonna go down into the weeds a little bit and discuss, the basics of how we do business as well. So I have an overview presentation that I'll go through in a moment. But before I do, we actually have a few brief remarks from our program officials at DOE headquarters. So I'm going to pause here for a second and introduce two speakers from headquarters. The first speaker is Dr. Bhima Sastry. Bhima currently serves as the Director for Integrated Carbon Management within the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management at US DOE headquarters. And basically, Bhima is the one that's advocating and championing for this program, and so including the University Training and Research Program and also the HBCU and OMI program. And he's championing on our behalf, to upper level DOE management as well as external stakeholders in the public. So Bhima is going to share a few thoughts about the program and how he sees things from his vantage point at DOE headquarters. So Bhima, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Sidney, and I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to this community. I'll definitely keep my remarks short, and then I'll make sure that Bob Smith, who manages the program here at headquarters, has a few words to say as well. What we've decided to do here is that maybe I'll talk a little bit about what our program is currently and what the future is, and maybe Bob can say a few words about the program as it was in the past and how it's become what it is now. We're really proud of this program. I'm specifically proud that the UTR program is in my division, and that I get to work with people like Sidney and Maria and all the folks who are here today. The passion that they bring to implementing this program really shines through, and it just kind of, you will see as this day progresses that they are truly a remarkable bunch of people to work with. Our role in headquarters really is to interact with Congress and make sure that the budgets and congressional justifications go through, plan the future budgets, and implement the budgets the way Congress has asked us to do. But the real meat of the program, the way the funding opportunities come out and all of that, and all the coordination work and the way the funds go out, everything is managed by Sidney and her group, and we really thank her for that. And she does a yeoman job, and you will see when she makes the presentation, how good she is at what she does. Just a few words from my end about the current and the future of this program. Our office, which used to be called the Office of Fossil Energy, recently changed its name. We are now the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management. And the mission of our program is really to minimize environmental impacts of fossil fuels. And as we do that, we are working towards the net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Many of you have probably heard this in the news that by 2035, the electric sector will be net zero, and then by 2050, the economy. And, we are the people who are helping the United States get there. And you, among the community of HBCU-OMIs, are the ones that are going to help us get there in kind of implementing these programs and making the office's mission really go forward. So we at FECM, we use research, basically RD&D, we call it, which is the research, development, demonstration, and deployment approaches in making sure that the technologies that we are funding are advanced enough to reduce carbon emissions and other environmental impacts of fossil fuel production and use. And we really want to go after the hardest of these to decarbonize anything that is related to electricity and industrial sectors, hard to decarbonize applications. We kind of, particularly go into those type of areas and work with them. So what we look at, in terms of this is helpful probably for the HBCUs, is a priority of technology areas include, point source carbon capture, hydrogen production and transport, for instance. And one of the things that we're really looking at this year is methane mitigation and reduction. As many of you know, methane, again, I'm probably preaching to the choir here because you folks are all the scientists and everybody know about this, is methane is 26 times as potent as CO2 in terms of greenhouse. and it's got a half-life which is like 10 years. So we believe that going after the methane emissions reductions would be like a quick time goal for us to kind of reduce the greenhouse gases and help this reducing of this global warming that we're talking about. So methane emissions reductions is a big part of our program. We also look at critical minerals production and carbon dioxide removal, basically using direct air capture and other technologies to address this accumulated CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. These targets for decarbonization have been established by the Biden administration in an executive order 14008. You can look that up, Executive Order 14008 is titled Tackling the Climate Crisis at Home and Abroad. And basically what it covers in a nutshell are carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035, as mentioned, and achieve net zero emissions by no later than 2050. So those are the two key aspects of the EO 14008 title that has been released by the White House. And achieving these goals basically cannot be done by us. We rely on you folks. It's a collaborative endeavor. It requires contributions from bright minds, and this is what this is why we come to folks like you and say, give us the ideas. We're just telling you some broad brush things about what we want to do. Hey, we want to produce hydrogen in large quantities. Tell us how. Tell us an economic way of doing it. How do we reduce methane in an economic way so that we can push these technologies out so that industries can pick them up and move it on from there. And so the efforts that you put in the HBCU and the OMI program and what you do are really essential to our efforts to discover new technologies and solutions that will help us reach our ultimate goal that's set forth in this executive order, really, and what the president wants us to do. So our program here that we have, it seeks to increase R&D opportunities for traditionally underrepresented communities within the U.S., and it also helps us, the U.S. tap into innovative thinking of student researchers at these minority-serving institutions of higher learning. So some of you may have already also heard in addition to the Executive Order 14008, the Justice 40 initiative by the Biden administration. President Biden's plan here is to deliver 40% of the overall benefits of climate investments to disadvantaged and structurally marginalized communities and inform equitable research, development, and deployment within the DOE for this objective. So I'd like to give a special welcome to the university researchers, professors, students, staff, and who are all here today from minority-serving institutions. And the work that you do is going to be the key, we believe, in training the next generation of scientists, engineers, leaders who are going to take this clean energy perspectives, clean energy technologies, how to operate them. And we believe that the next generation of scientists are all within these universities and within this group who are listening today. And the reason why this is so important is because these research communities in academia, where all the new cutting edge ideas and new solutions are coming from, are really what feeds this program. Because we're relying on you and your contributions in terms of the R&D to help us achieve this net zero, we really want your cooperation. And today's program that we're presenting and what Sidney and others are going to go through and Bob's going to talk about are basically that. And Bob works here with me in headquarters as a program manager, and he's the one who kind of monitors these funds and how everything is done here at headquarters. He's a liaison that he works with Congress too in terms of putting together congressional justifications. So I'd like to close out my remarks by saying, really thank you for taking the time today Thank you for your interest in this program. That's sponsored by the FECM program. And by the way, there is no other department within DOE that does this. So it's a unique program. And what's happening over the last few years is that the light is shining so much on these programs and the contributions that you have made that other divisions within DOE are coming to us and saying, how can we also be a part of this? All I can say is that tells that, that we're doing a really great job and that people are noticing us, people are noticing what you all are doing, and they want to be a part. So thank you for participating in this 2021 webinar, and we're really excited, and I hope you will find this webinar to be very informative in terms of, applying for these funds. And I will pass on the baton to Bob Smith, who's a program manager at headquarters, and then, Sidney after that will take over. I thank you all for this opportunity, and Bob, you can take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhima, and thank you for the deep level of managerial support that this program always elicits. It's a very important thing that everyone in our office is united in achieving the goals of this program. And I know I speak for Sidney when I say that we feel deeply supported by all levels of management in the mission areas of the program. I just wanted to briefly touch on two aspects of the program that I thought would be kind of interesting for those of you who don't have a lot of exposure to the UTR. And the first point I want to make is that the UTR has a very, very proud history here in FECM. This isn't something new that is arising with this administration. It's actually was initiated during the Reagan administration in the mid-1980s. And so it's a program of incredible durability and has impacted so many students of all ages. And so even though the program is, I would say, getting more attention and looking at ways it can expand, and of course, as Bhima noted, facilitate some of the goals in the Justice 40 initiative, we have been fostering very deep relationships with several universities, including HBCUs and OMIs, for over 3.5 decades. And part of the literature on the program that's available online is looking at the past history of awards. And so you'll be able to see that we have these deep relationships with the different schools. And we're always looking to grow, reach new universities and colleges, and building on that proud legacy. And I guess just kind of an addendum to that point is that we, throughout the decades, we've supported very kind of different topic areas. So things like water usage, high performance materials, cybersecurity, sensors and control, accuracy and durability. And as you'll see from the FOAs released later in the month, we'll have some new areas of focus. So it is a proud legacy program, but we're always innovating in terms of how we think the program can best enable the current administration goals. And then finally, I just wanted to note that this program isn't just for research associated with doctoral students. Although the students that are directly impacted by the program, a third are doctoral students. We also, in that remaining, 2/3, have pretty much equal mixes between master's degree students and undergraduate students. And I think that's very important because while we do want to assist in the highly technical work of a doctoral dissertation, we also want to reach a young audience that's still thinking about careers in science and engineering and energy. And so working with a 19-year-old is a lot different from working with a PhD student in his late 20s. And so this program really reaches across all types of students. One of the things that Sidney has really taken a lead on is quantifying the impacts of these programs and who is directly working on this research. And we've had, dozens and dozens of students within the last few years involved in these programs. And as I said, it's roughly an equal mix between undergraduate is about a third and graduate is 2/3. And then if you want to split that down, it's roughly a third, and a third between undergraduate, master's, and PhD. So that's another important aspect of this program. And so once again, we thank our managers, and I also want to thank Sidney. And please, Sidney, back over to you to tell everyone more.
Bima, Bob, thank you so much for the kind words and for sharing your perspectives. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move right along. And what I want to do is basically give an overview of the program itself. So the suspense has been, built up, so we're going to not hold you any longer. So next slide, please. Okay, so just this is one slide, intro in terms of, a few slides, intro of NETL. So like Bima and Bob mentioned, we reside in the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, and you might hear us use the acronym FECM. So basically, NETL is committed to being that implementation arm on behalf of the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management. And basically, we're centering all of our research and development efforts to create, develop, and ultimately realize, the technology solutions of tomorrow, essentially. One of our main focus areas is to develop technologies around management of carbon across its full life cycle. But at the end of the day, our core objective, as with all the DOE offices, is to, ensure that we have, affordable, abundant, and reliable sources of energy. And we could do it in an equitable and environmentally sustainable way. So overall, we serve as conveners. We try to pull, different aspects of, industry, academia, other national labs. We pull them together, and events like this are an example. And at the end of the day, we do want to make sure that we have are responsible stewards of the environment, but also, responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars as well. Next slide, please. Okay, excellent. So NETL, we have multiple sites, but we fall under the banner of one NETL, one mission. So we have the Albany site. They, have traditionally focused in on materials and alloy development, and then we have kind of our NETL East, which includes our Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania site, as well as our Morgantown, West Virginia site. And you can see, within the slide, some of the research focus areas for the different sites. We also have field offices in Alaska and Texas that also serve our programmatic mission. But there's just a handful of personnel at those locations. The main 3 laboratories or 3 lab sites are in Albany, Pittsburgh, and Morgantown. Next slide, please. So here's a quick snapshot of NETL, and again, I mentioned the 3 main labs. You can see, we have a lot of activities going on in terms of 1,000+ R&D projects at any point in time across the entire nation. Our current active research is generally at $5 billion, and our annual budget is give or take, but around $1 billion as well. And then on the right, you can see kind of how the workforce for our laboratory is split. So you can see, we actually have, internal research that happens, and we also support and fund extramural research. But so we have, research faculty or research staff members, and then we also support, students such as overrides and things like that on site. So you can see the split there. And then also we have a very strong administrative and like managerial and administrative arm that allows us to actually do procurement and management, technical management of research activities for not just ourselves, FECM, but also other departments and other agencies. Next slide, please. So I won't dwell too much. I just use this to, mention at a very high level, again, just to reiterate. So typically our annual budget is roughly $1 billion, and we cover a lot of different technology areas. I basically use this slide to highlight, cross-cutting research and where it resides, because that's where our university training and research program, that's the umbrella where it fits. And it's almost like a wheel within a wheel, but for folks out there who actually follow this type of thing in terms of congressional budgets and things like that, I just want to make sure that I give you enough reference for you to find us again. Next slide. So yeah, as I mentioned before, university training and research, it resides in cross-cutting research. But just to kind of see, where from this perspective, where that program fits alongside all the other technology areas and all the other activities that we have going on. I'm not going to go through all of these, because there's so many activities overall. The emphasis is on the left-hand side with, carbon capture, carbon storage, and utilization. So basically, the advanced technologies and techniques that effectively capture CO2 and also enable the safe permanent storage of CO2 as well. And then we have our advanced energy systems, in terms of, and that's technologies such as hydrogen turbines, solid oxide fuel cells, hydrogen production via gasification processes, and so on and so forth. And again, this slide, you see cross-cutting research, and it's basically, the name in and of itself kind of speaks to the cross-cutting nature of the work that we do there. So a lot of things like sensors and controls are enabling technologies, fundamental materials development, fundamental modeling and simulation, things like that. And then also people. So university training and research, the focus area there is on the people. And that obviously cross-cuts all the application areas, because we're trying to invest in the professional development of young people in terms of students and things like that. Next slide, please. All right, so this is my our contact information. So again, cross-cutting research, it comprises 6 different areas, and we kind of have it split down the middle. I have 3 portfolios, one of which is the university training and research, and you just have that point of contact. And then also, just for completeness, we also have Anthony Zinn, who's on detail, who also serves as a portfolio lead for 3 programs as well. I'll just say here, you can, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me or even Anthony. Even if you're not sure if we're the right people, go ahead and don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll direct traffic from there. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of university training and research, so go ahead and the next slide, because of course that's the occasion of the day. So I like this slide because it kind of shows, some of our objectives, and Bima mentioned a few of them, but I'm going to take a moment here to reinforce it. So at its foundation and core, our program is an education and training program, such that we can, develop leaders and engineers and scientists of the future, essentially. And the program itself, it houses 2 programs. One is the historically Black colleges and universities, as well as other minority serving institutions. So HBCU-OMI, and again, that's the occasion of the day. We also houses the University Coal Research Program as well. And both of those programs, with that foundation, both of those programs are conducting early stage R&D in service of fossil energy and carbon management technologies and applications. And what we do is, through our support, through the program support, we also are helping these institutions, expand their research capabilities, like build out test rigs and things like that. And then specific to HBCU and OMI, we are very focused on, providing opportunities such that we can have, an inclusive environment for traditionally underrepresented communities overall. And then between both of these programs, whether it be HBCU-OMI as well as University Coal Research, both these programs help us to, develop and produce a highly skilled, well-qualified workforce overall. And we think in doing so, it also makes us more competitive as a nation. Next slide, please. So this is just in word form of what we just said in pictorial form in last slide, but I'll just hit the high points. So again, fundamentally, we are educating and training that next generation of engineers. We're doing so through technology development. So we're doing novel early stage R&D at these colleges and universities, excuse me. And one of our primary goals, as with our HBCU and OMI program, is to increase the opportunities for underrepresented communities and make sure that you have a seat at the table, so to speak. And at the end of the day, we also have an eye toward making sure that through our programs and through our funding support, the students that are being trained are being equipped with cutting edge translatable skills. So whether they work and contribute and stay in the Department of Energy, or if they even go out into other sectors, whether it be space, health field, wherever their path takes them, that we know that the tools that they acquired and skills that they acquired through our programs are translatable, and they can go anywhere their path goes. Next slide. So if you allow me to just take a quick detour, and I'll make it even more brief because I know we're a little bit behind time here, but I just want to circle back to the fundamental challenges that also help to serve as a motivation for this program, because I think is very informative for us to also focus on why. Like, why do we do all of this? And as I already said, with the university program, yes, we're centered on students, but we use technology as the vehicle to do this professional development and investment into people. Next slide, please. So in terms of our technology development goals, this is why we're doing it. And I think Bima did a good job of kind of teeing it up. But we have, very aggressive, a very strong climate change goals that we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve 50% reduction in greenhouse gas pollution by 2030. And like Bima said earlier today, he mentioned Executive Order 14008. Basically, we are trying to have a carbon neutral power sector by 2035 and a full carbon neutral economy by 2050. So here we are sitting in 2021, right? In order to achieve and have the technologies that are ready as solutions to be able to contribute and to realize these goals, we have a lot of work to do. So next slide, please. So if you can imagine, if we want, so what you're looking at is basically a graph as how we see it in terms of technology development. And we use technology readiness levels, or TRLs, to basically, at any point in time, track the status of a given technology. And it starts at, that the lowest level, it starts at discovery, that proof of concept, the initial world building to try to do the initial designs and prototyping, things like that. And then we try to advance technologies, in these gates and steps. We're trying to progress it along the way such that at the end of the day, we have a fully realized technology solution. And again, if you can almost look at it, I know it's like a technology development volcano, but if you can also put a flag at the top of this hill, and the flag is, we want to be able to achieve 2035 carbon reduction goals, then you can see, we were trying to back out from there, the pathway of technology development to get there. And university training and research in the HBCU and OMI community, all the research that you guys are doing, all the work and effort, that is where like Bema said, that's where the traditionally all the new ideas come from, the disruptive technologies, the new ways of thinking of things, the new perspectives. And we try a lot of different ideas. So in that early stage TRL, and we try to advance it from there. So this program is key. So again, if we're trying to reach 2035, and that's the flag at the top of the hill, it starts here in 2021 with the early stage R&D and the new ideas that are coming from the universities. And it's not just universities, it's also small businesses, it's also the national labs. But overall, the universities are a very critical piece of that as well. All right, next slide. So yeah, so how do we do it? So, when we say we're investing and supporting research, this is how we do it. So within our program, traditionally, we have an annual funding opportunity announcement, or we call it an FOA. And this is basically a nationwide competitive solicitation that we put out every year, and to basically solicit research and development that will help us to achieve our technology development goals in service of trying to achieve our ultimate goal of decarbonization. Typically, our awards are facilitated or conducted as grants. And the typical duration of our grants are 2 to 3 years. It varies, but traditionally or typically it's about 2 to 3 years roughly. And within that 2 to 3 years, that's enough for, if you have an undergraduate student, they can matriculate. If you have a master's student, they can also matriculate. And then a PhD, 2 or 3 years of PhD work, they can graduate and then go off and, save the world, right? So we typically have that length of duration because we are focused on students and we want to make sure that they're successful. And then the typical award size, again, this also varies. We even go lower than 400 sometimes, but just typically we're at 400 and 500K for each grant. So, and we have hyperlinks again, like Maria said, we will make these available on our website for download. And if you haven't seen anything, you can always reach out to me. I'll push you a copy in the future. But this is how we do it, in terms of putting out a solicitation and having it be competitive. All right, so next slide. And then these are just a few portfolio highlights. I mean, I'm not going to dwell, again, I'm a little bit behind time, but at the end of the day, it just shows the breadth of the types of research that we do. Again, we kind of sit under the umbrella of cross-cutting research as well. So there's a lot of different applications. Right now active, we have things such as robotic inspection, doing analysis and repair of components. We're doing water treatment, to help reduce freshwater withdrawals and things like that. We also do things like trying to sensing. Novel sensing concepts for continuous online monitoring, and so on and so forth. So we have a lot. This is not even touching the surface of the things that we have active, but it just gives you a feel for the type of work that we do. And again, it crosses a lot of different application spaces. Next slide, please. And then here's our program budget. So the green across the top, that's our HBCU-OMI program. Traditionally, for the last couple of fiscal years, it's been at $2.05 million. It is a small but mighty program, and we are looking to expand hopefully into the future. But sitting in FY21, or excuse me, in FY21, we had $2 million, and we don't have an enacted budget for FY22, but we are hoping, hopefully, to expand. But we have that hope. But at the end of the day, again, we're able to do a lot with our resources, and we do make sure that we maximize the amount of dollars that are being pushed out the door to these institutions and these communities. Next slide, please. And then this is just, pie charts, but I want to emphasize, so current and active right now, we have 42 projects, and you can see the split between UCR and HBCU-OMI and the total dollar award value. And then again, this pie chart on the right just kind of shows the breadth of the technology spaces. So it can be energy storage. We have some cybersecurity blockchain work going on. We have some quantum work going on. Like, we have a lot going on. And again, it's all contributing, all helping us reach our ultimate goals of decarbonization. Next slide. And next slide, I'm just going to go ahead and skip UCR. I'm going to go to HBCU. So on HBCU, so we currently, again, 17 projects. We have about $7.4 million active, and then currently we are supporting 44 students. So as of yesterday, November 2021, we had 44 students, and then I feel like on the last slide we had 58 students in UCR. So at any given point, we roughly have about 100 to 102 or so students actively being supported through our combined programs. So, and again, we're something we're proud of, and hopefully we can even expand into the future. Next slide. And here are our university partners, and so you can see the full list. And I should have highlighted these, the HBCUs, but we have, and we have also the historically Hispanic serving institutions as well. So UTEP, University of San Antonio. But again, on the HBCU side, we have, I can see just in North Carolina A&T out there. We have Howard University. We have Florida A&M University. And others. So we are, again, supporting these institutions, and we're always looking to do more. Next slide, please. And then this is just at the kind of the coverage map for HBCU-OMI, kind of where we are geographically. We are trying to expand the map. So if you are sitting here listening to this presentation and you're in a state that it isn't represented yet, then it means, you know what, hopefully you're up next. You know, make sure you, if there is something that in terms of our future research calls that does align with the work that you're doing, don't hesitate to put in a proposal, because again, we're trying to, you know, support you and your research, support the students, but also expand the map and make sure that we can get, you know, more folks kind of within our tent, so to speak. And next slide. And just for completeness, this was the UCR program, a little bit on the heavy on the East Coast. We're looking to expand that map into the future. Next slide. This is an eye chart, but you know, I use this to kind of summarize our recent history FOAs. And again, we traditionally have an annual FOA. But you can see from the topic descriptions, like the topic titles, you can see the breadth of the work that we're doing. And it covers a lot of different areas. And again, you see cybersecurity, robotics, modeling, machine learning, and data analytics and things like that. Next slide. And then last, in FY21, we had even 5G wireless technologies, materials, supply chain. We did hydrogen production, looking at it a lot of different ways. So hopefully, you know, again, everything that we call for is on trend and things that we need, but also in the doing allows the students to be able to get a lot of get trained and get a lot of skill sets that they could take and apply to, again, wherever their path goes. Next slide. I think this is the end. Oh, and so of course, in the technology development, we're also very keen on, you know, patents and intellectual property, and we're starting to track this now. So we're kind of going back and trying to, dig out, where the patents are. So over the past, say, 10 years, we've actually have 11 patent filings, and they're at different various stages along the way. And here are some examples of some patents that have been issued. We know it's a long process for a patent to be, the initial filing all the way to an issued patent, but we're trying to track that as well. And it's again a good accomplishment and a success story for the training program overall. Next slide. So that I have hyperlinks, and then I'll finish up. I also wanted to, next slide, please. I also wanted to highlight that so in addition to our institutional, grants that go to the institution and then support students, we also have opportunities that support the students directly. So there's ORISE and also Mickey Leland Energy Fellowship. So I'm going to go ahead, so that concludes my presentation, but I'm going to go ahead. We have a speaker, Sandra Pena-Herrera. She's actually serves as a program manager at DOE headquarters in the Office of Workforce Management and Administration. She's actually going to share with us a little bit of information about the Mickey Leland program. And again, this is directed towards students and opportunities for students to do summer internship experiences and things like that. She's going to give us a quick walkthrough of the Mickey Leland program. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Sandra. And next slide. I think it's just contact information. You can go to Sandra's title page. Perfect. Thank you. Sandra, you have the floor.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share with you information about the Mickey Leland Energy Fellowship Program, which will allow students at your respective institutions to learn about all the things that Sidney just talked about. So all of the different areas that she reviewed, students have the opportunity to gain its experience in those fields, in those research projects through this program. Again, my name is Sandra Pena-Herrera, and I serve as the program manager for this program. Next slide, please. The Mickey Leland Energy Fellowship Program is a research opportunity for students at the associate's, bachelor's, and master's degree level. The program is a 10-week-long program that takes place during the summer. Each participant is paired with a mentor. Our mentors are senior scientists and engineers, researchers that develop a challenging research project that can be completed in a short amount of time. Our mentors guide students through project completion with the hope of increasing their confidence in their research abilities. In addition to the research project, all of our students write a technical paper and give a presentation on their project and research findings. The presentation is delivered using PowerPoint to their peers as well as to our leadership. And we hope that this experience, the project, the paper, the communicating out via presentation and in writing will help increase our participants' confidence in being able to do the type of research that we do here at FECM. Next slide, please. These are some of the areas that projects have focused on in the past. It is not an all-inclusive list, but just to give you an idea of what students have worked on in the past, our projects do change from year to year. They're not going to be the same every year, but they do fall in line with what you've heard from the previous presenter. Next slide, please. Our application is currently open for students to apply to for the summer 2022 session. In order to be eligible for the program, there are certain criteria that applicants need to meet. They need to be at least 18 years of age, be a U.S. citizen, have at least a 2.8 GPA, be enrolled full-time in a STEM degree program at the associate's, bachelor's, or master's level at the time of application, and be at least a college sophomore or above. We do ask that students, if they are selected, that they commit for the full 10 weeks of the program, as well as attend an orientation and the technical forum. The application deadline for the summer 2022 program is coming up on January 10th of 2022. I will be holding information sessions. We actually have one scheduled for tomorrow and then 2 more after that. If you or any of your students want to attend, I do encourage you to visit our website and register for one of those sessions where I can go in a lot more detail about the program. I also give tips on how to develop a strong application and a federal resume. Next slide, please. All of our students do receive a stipend for their participation in the program. Students at the associate's and bachelor's level receive $650 per week, and students at the master's level will receive $750 per week. We're not sure just yet how the program will be carried out for 2022. If we have an in-person program, we also cover travel, and we do provide a housing allowance for students that are selected for a site that is more than 50 miles from their home address. So if they need to relocate in order to participate, we do assist with travel and some housing. If it's not in person, if it's a virtual, we do provide a technology subsidy. And this amount helps offset any costs that students may incur to be able to connect with the host site and any other things they might need to be able to participate virtually. And that is the program in a nutshell. I gave you the quick version. If you want to go to the next slide, you'll see my contact information. Feel free to connect with me if you want to have me present to your students, to your campus specifically. We'd be more than happy to do that. Again, with a little more time, I can get more into the details that might be of interest to students in terms of developing a strong application and so forth. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the opportunity to present.
All right, thanks so much, Sandra. Next slide, please. Let's go ahead and move on to our next presenter. All right, so our next presenter is going to be Mark Coonrad, who's a grants management specialist here at NETL. He's going to go over doing business with the federal government. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Sydney. This is Mark, and just want to say hello and welcome to our presentation. So I've got 2 sections I'm going to cover. The first is kind of a broad overview on what you need to do as an organization to get registered for our grants. And there's several different places. And then the second section, we're going to dig into kind of what the FOA document actually looks like. And apologies, I lost my voice over the Thanksgiving weekend, so if my voice comes across scratchy, I do apologize. So next slide, please. So the first thing that you want to do is you're going to identify the opportunity of interest through our FOA, which is Funding Opportunity Announcement. And go ahead and go to the next slide. just some things that you need to be aware of is that, we call these FOAs, but they are known by other names with other agencies. So just be aware that, they're called program announcements or requests for applications, different things. And this is an example cover page. You'll see when you do find our FOA, this is just an example. This is last year's HBCU-OMI FOA. The number for this year's is going to be DE-FOA-0002598. Next slide, please. And so the 4 places that you're going to need to make sure that your organization is registered is you're going to want to make sure you have a DUNS number, that you're registered in SAM, which is the System for Award Management. And the 2 big ones for our FOA are grants.gov and FedConnect. And both of those links, you can go to them, and there's instructions for registration, but I'm going to go over just some basics from each one. Next slide, please. All right, for grants.gov, basically you're going to need your AOR, authorized organizational representative, to register, and that's going to trigger an email that will show up to whoever's listed for your organization in SAM, and then that's gonna your AOR will then verify that your registration is complete on grants.gov. And remember, grants.gov is where you will submit your application package. Next slide, please. FedConnect.net. You need to make sure that you're registered there. That's where you're going to download the announcement. You can download the announcement there and any amendments, and that's where you're going to communicate with the federal representative. So if you have questions during the process, you're going to upload those questions through FedConnect, and that is kind of lengthy, so 44 days. So if you're not already registered, you're going to want to get on that pretty quickly. Next slide, please. All right, so if you have any questions, there's the grants.gov contact information. Once again, you'll have access to the slide deck, and this will be posted, so you can go back and get this phone number and this email address. And just to remember that it's very important that your questions related to the content of the announcement, they have to be submitted to FedConnect, because we need to make sure that when we answer the question that you ask, that everybody gets a chance to see that answer. It's basically just fairness. We don't want to give it one organization, one university, an upper hand by answering a question that affects everybody. Next slide, please. Go ahead and go to the, actually, that last bullet there. Applications must be submitted by qualified HBCU-OMI authorized representative. So just make sure that is the person, or that is who is going to be submitting the application. Go ahead, next slide, please. So in FedConnect, when you want to go find the FOA, once it's published here later on in December, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to get into FedConnect, and you're going to hit this Search Public Opportunities Only button. So the next slide, please. And what's important on this next screen is make sure that the issuing office shows as National Energy Technology Lab. So you're gonna type in National Energy Technology Lab right there, then hit the search button, and you're gonna go ahead and go to the next slide. And you're gonna get a list of your search results. And so within that, you're gonna want to find DE-FOA 0002598. And so again, this is just an example, but this is what it's going to look like. You're going to see the title of our FOA. You're going to see that it's from NETL, and then you're going to see the phone number. So you'll click on the title. Next slide, please. So you get into this next screen, and this next screen it's a little bit convoluted. That there's a lot of information going on here, so just really important to focus on how you're going to get the information you need. So on the right hand side, it's like 3 different columns. On the right hand column, you're going to see the FOA number and this little document symbol. You're going to want to click that, and that's going to open up the FOA. If there is an amendment to it, then you would click the amendment, and it would open up that as well. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So these other buttons, just basically, if you get here and you're not registered, this gives you a chance to go ahead and register. And up to this point, you can get here, just you don't have to be signed in or all. But if you do sign in after you've registered, then you'll get access to more information and more ability to respond to this. Next slide, please. So just some more information for where you can find our FOA, FedConnect, grants.gov. But additionally, if you go to the NETL business link that you see on this slide, that will show all of the solicitations that's out there for NETL. Next slide. So that is kind of the quick and dirty version of how to get registered. I know that was a lot of information. Your business folks for your organization should, you know, kind of understand and know that, because it's the same. Most of it is a lot of the same process that we use, that other federal agencies use for grants and cooperative agreements. So we'll go to the next slide, and we'll get into what does a FOA look like. All right, you can go to the next slide, please. So this is a typical FOA format. You're going to have 8 main sections and then your appendices. So we'll kind of get into some of those main sections. So next slide, please. So when you get into your table of contents, it's going to show you your background, your description, a lot of what has already been covered in our presentation. You're going to see here that, you know, why we're doing what we're doing, and then this is going to show you the areas of interest for the FOA. And just remember that when you apply, you're going to be applying for a specific area of interest, and understand that the FOA requirements for that AOI, each AOI might be a little bit different. So it's critical to make sure that you understand those when you're crafting your application, because we want good responsive applications. It brings us to our next part, which is applications specifically not of interest. Get into here and pay special attention to this, because you don't want to go through all the work of submitting an application just for it to be considered non-responsive. So that'll list out some areas that we're really not interested in. So next slide, please. Okay, award overview. So this is going to show you some critical information like estimated funding, number of awards. And when you get into the FOA, it's kind of nice because there's a table in the FOA that's going to show each area of interest and what the maximum DOE share is. And that's important because as you craft your budget, you want to make sure that you're only asking for you're not asking for more than what the maximum amount of funding for that AOI is. And then the same with the estimated period of performance. If an AOI has a 24-month period of performance, you want to make sure that your project fits within that. Next slide, please. Eligible applicants, this is going to specify, this is a restricted eligibility FOA. I mean, you have to be an HBCU-OMI eligible applicant. You can, however, have subrecipients that are not HBCU-OMI eligible, but just make sure that as the prime that you are. And what else from here? Cost share requirements. This FOA, these are grants, so there is no cost share required, but it is allowable. So if in kind of budgeting out your project, there is cost share that you want to put in, you are allowed to do that, but it is definitely not required. D&E are their compliance criteria, responsiveness criteria. These are going to detail what is considered compliant responsive to the FOA. This is important just because we want to make sure that what you submit is, you know, that we can review it. And make sure to read each of these sections for compliance purposes. Next slide, please. Form and content requirements. This is important. You want to make sure that simple things like font and page limitations, spacing requirements, all those are going to be detailed in here, and you want to make sure that you fit into what we have set out as requirements. And this basically, we throw these in there because we want to make sure that everybody, again, it's a fairness. Everybody gets the same amount of room basically for their application. If it's 25 pages, then everybody gets 25 pages, and we want to make sure people stay within the same font size. Go ahead and go to the next page. Okay, so when you get in, your SF 424 is going to be your principal form for submitting your application, and then the project performance site location. This is a form to indicate that the primary site where the work will be performed. So again, if there's going to be work done in multiple locations, make sure this is the primary site. Note that the project performance site congressional district is introducing a 2-digit state code. So you're going to want to know what your 3-digit congressional district code is. And again, your business folks at your organization should know that. And finally, just it's very important because there is restricted eligibility for this FOA, that your HBCU-OMI eligible documentation is a copy that is provided. Next page, next slide, please. Okay, project narratives. A project narrative is a core item in the application package. Your concept, technology background, research plan, potential improvement to the state of the art are presented. Make sure that the following formatting requirements are met. It has to be Adobe PDF, or and it needs to not exceed 25 pages. There are some items like the cover page, table of contents that are not included in that 25, but this is where we get into those font and spacing restrictions to make sure that we fit with them. And again, the FOA document is going to tell you exactly what, how all this needs to look. Just a note that applicants tend to repeat themselves within an application, so each of these files should be a standalone document, so don't refer to another document within the current one. It just takes up space, and just everything should be standalone. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Some helpful information, and I'm not going to read all of these. Roles and responsibilities of participants is an important one. Describe the roles and the work to be performed by each participant investigator. Just be clear and concise about who's doing what. Equipment, if you're proposing to acquire equipment, describe some comparable equipment, if any, that's already at your organization and why it can't be used. And again, you're getting into the budget, which we'll get into later, but I'll just mention it now. If you do plan on purchasing equipment or things like that, when you get into your budget justifications, you're going to want to make sure that you have quotes or have some kind of cost basis of why something costs what you say it does. Next page, please. So the summary for public release, it's a key item to remember, is that it can be publicly distributed. So don't include any of your proprietary or business sensitive information. This should be a one-page document. It's going to identify your project director or your principal investigator, which we call the PI, project title, objectives, and the plan is also going to include, that's the summary for public release. Then getting into the project management plan, there's a list of all the things that you would generally see in there. It takes 6 or 8 pages. Again, there's restrictions on what type or how this should look. And the environmental questionnaire, and there's a link there to get to. This is a questionnaire that we require for each geographic site where the project activities are going to take place. Go ahead and get to the next slide. Resumes, each key person proposed on the project, including for your subawardees, needs to have a 2-page resume. There's a definition what we consider a key person. It's anybody who contributes in a substantive, measurable way to the execution of the project. There's a note. Oh yeah, if your PI needs to be an employee of the prime of your organization. You can have a sub PI or a co-PI that is an employee of a sub awardee or a sub recipient, but your primary principal investigator needs to be an employee of the prime. Next page, please. So in your budget justification, we use the SF 424A, which is an Excel document, and there's a link for it there. This is where when you get into, justifying the cost for each project, you're going to want to try and be as detailed as possible. If you're using traditional costs that your organization charged, that's fine. If you're going to use quotes that you've gone out for supplies or equipment, it's good to include those quotes. And just be as detailed as possible. It helps us figure out exactly how the money is going to be spent. So next slide, please. So noteworthy items, the merit review criteria is the criteria that the NETL is going to use to judge these applications by. And inside the FOA, there's a link that will take you into the merit review guide. And that kind of will give you, it's a pretty in-depth document that gives you an idea of what does that mean? How is it that we actually judge these things? So would be worth your time to get in there and look at that. Next slide, please. Some additional sections. Section 7 is going to have agency contact information. That my information will be in there. And then the appendices are going to have your important templates to follow while you're developing your application. Next slide, please. And that is it. And again, I kind of rushed through that a little bit, but once you see the FOA document and you download it and get it in your hands, it'll be a lot easier to understand. To contact us questions, there's a few links on this slide. There's my email address. Again, for the most part, questions about the FOA in particular, once it's published, you'll use FedConnect to ask those questions, and that's so that they can be answered in a way that everybody can see the answers. And that is all I have. So I believe that Sarah is next.
Thank you very much, Mark. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the areas of interest, or the AOIs. Next slide, please. So just to kind of reiterate that wonderful discussion that Sidney had, just to kind of refocus us, the purpose of this program is to educate and train, the next generation of scientists and engineers, and we're using this as I believe Sidney used the term vehicle, which is an excellent way to put it, to kind of give this opportunity to get involved in the goals and use the research to, do this education and training. And this area, it touches a lot of different types of research, a lot of different technology areas. There's a few at the bottom of the slide that are called out: sensors, materials, water management, energy storage, etc. Providing a lot of good experiences to develop these skill sets. Can I have next slide? So The FOA gives the area of interest, and it provides a lot of background and detail where, sorry, gotta move, there we go. A lot of background on what we're looking for in the proposal, and they should be read very, very carefully because there's a lot of really good details and a lot of good information. There's also often some references that can be looked at to provide feedback or sort of ideas to move forward. Of course, the number and the types of the areas, they're dependent on the amount of funding and how the goals change and how different technologies mature, and they're typically change annually. One of the other key points is that there's also going to be descriptions of things that we're not looking for. So that's going to be an entire section. And you want to look really closely at those to make sure that the technology and the research that you're proposing doesn't fall underneath one of those not being sought. Next slide, please. So this is just a list of some of the previous areas of interest. Again, these are ones that happened in previous years. They're not necessarily what's going to be up for proposals coming up. And one of the things I really want to highlight is how these different areas change from year to year and how there's a number of different ones. I think it looks like the minimum number here, there's 4 different areas of interest, and they're all different. So keep in mind that there's going to be a lot of different areas. So if that first area doesn't fit what you're interested in, keep looking and read them very, very carefully. Next slide, please. So just to point out from an example, this is not active area. This is from last year's AOI 1B. And some of the things I wanted to highlight are highlighted in yellow. And I wanted to point out that the projects can be very different. So some can be pure experimental, some can be computational, there can be a combination of the two, and they can cover a lot of different areas. They can include a lot of different things. So a lot of different types of experiments, and they can touch on a lot of different areas. The other thing that I really wanted to point out is that typically in the AOIs, there's a discussion on what is considered successful. So these success metrics are going to describe exactly what we're looking for as far as the project and the proposal to make it a successful project. Next slide, please. So as I keep saying, and at risk of repeating myself ad nauseum, you want to read the FOA very, very carefully. There's background, there's objectives, there's topics. Really understand what is being asked for, understand the language, and then do a very careful assessment of if what you're wanting to propose actually fits with what we're looking for. There's a lot of information, a lot of different specificities that you want to be aware of. Next slide, please. And then as you're putting this together, it's not just having the idea. You want to put together the team. You want to figure out who's actually going to be doing the work. Do you want to work with other institutions and get the necessary information from them, such as letters of support? If they're going to provide a financial investment, figure out a schedule and look at the dates. Everything has really strict deadlines for when things are due. So you're going to want to be very aware of that, particularly if you're building up a larger team where you're going to have a lot of moving parts. So be very organized. And then as we specified earlier, if you have any questions about the FOA while the FOA is open, we use FedConnect to ask those questions. We always want to make sure that it's fair so that everybody has the same opportunities to have the questions answered. So that's the method we use. And if you have a question, see if your question has already been answered. It's possible if you have that question, somebody else is also going to have that question and it may already be answered. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of different pieces that are required. So in the FOA, there's a list that goes through everything that is required. Make sure you touch on everything that's required and then sort of add the extra little bits to kind of use a little bit of a descriptor, you want to address the cake before you try and ice the cake. So make sure you have all the parts before you try to put them all together. And make sure you actually submit everything. So even if you have everything, but you forgot that one to submit that one document, unfortunately, if we don't have that, we can't consider it to be a full proposal. And again, that's just to make sure that everything is fair from one proposal to the next. And make sure that everything also complies. And that can be things as simple as number of pages or the font size or the font type. Next page. So that's everything I have. If you have any questions, we have the chat open. And I think I will turn it over to Sidney to touch on any final questions we have.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it. Okay, so so we have, I think we go, so that's, so first of all, I just want to say thank you everybody for your participation in this event. Hopefully, I know we covered a lot of ground. We had some technical issues along the way, but hopefully you have a better idea of our who we are, what we do, the programs that we have in terms of the HBCU-OMI program, and basically our dedication to supporting minority serving institutions overall. So hopefully it was productive for you, and you are going to walk away with having more knowledge, and again, we hope that we hope that our paths cross in the future. So hopefully this prepares you, and in terms of the greater awareness for the opportunities that are available to you, whether it be through our FOAs or through the Mickey Leland program or other venues. And that, at the end of the day, you take a full advantage of it as well. So with that, so we have about 10 minutes. So we're going to stay here as long as we have questions. We'll take a few questions. Go ahead and put them in the chat. And I'll, as the questions are coming in, and I think we had one, I'll go ahead and address it in a second. I also want to take the opportunity to say thank you to all the speakers today as well. So definitely want to thank Maria Reedpath, Bhima Sastry, Bob Smith, Sandra Pena Herrera, Mark Coonrad, and Sarah Nathan. Thank you guys so much for your presentations. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who's working, behind the scenes and helping with logistics in terms of our KeyLogic site support. So thank you guys. So let me go ahead and answer a few questions here. I think we had two. I feel like we answered one in the chat, but there was one question about the number of awards each year. And so someone asked, is it typically 4 awards? So I would say that's about the range, 4 to 6 awards at the current level. So again, as I mentioned, our funding level is roughly $2 million. That's where it was the last 3 fiscal years. And our typical, and it's not always the case, but our typical award size is 400 to 500K. So generally every year out of this particular program, we're getting about 4 to 6 awards. Like I said, it varies. But we do hope that we can expand this program into the future. So, and we go from there. So again, small but mighty program. And let me see here if there are any other questions. And feel free, Lucas and others, y'all can help me out. So I just see some discussion amongst ourselves, but here we go. Oh, thanks, Mark. So because I had technical, it kind of threw me off earlier in the presentation. So I did want to make an announcement that just today, we did release our notice of intent for our university training and research for fossil energy and carbon management minority serving institutions. So Mark just put the link to FedConnect and that NOI announcement. So it's publicly available, and that's why he was able to reference it throughout his presentation. Go ahead and follow that hyperlink, bookmark that page, and just, again, it's a notice of intent. That just basically means, be on the lookout for the actual FOA release that should be coming sometime soon. So again, hot off the presses, we just made that public this morning, and you guys have the link there. We just put it in the chat. Okay, any other? Okay, so in terms of the website post, and so yes, thanks for that question. So we will be posting the link. Oh, hold on. Actually, I can put that. Hold on. They're asking for the link to where these will be posted. So let me grab that real quick. Good question. So if anybody's on our main web page, you can navigate to our main web page, and we have a conference proceedings page. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. And again, I think it was mentioned. Hold on one second. All right, so I'm going to put it in the chat. Can somebody help me out to push it out to the whole everyone? But I will say we are going to, everybody who registered for this event will also get an email when because it takes give us a few days. It takes time for the video to come in. It takes time for us to just post it, but we will try to turn that around sooner than later and get that up very quickly. But everybody who registered will get notified once the webinar video is posted. And we just post it on YouTube, so it should be available and accessible to everybody. And then we'll also have on the website of the conference proceedings, you'll be able to click on it, and you'll get also PDF versions of the presentation today as well. Okay. Okay, so we received a question about, and it gets specific, but it basically talks about they're considering a high risk project and for isolating CO2. Is this good? So I'll just say this. We can't answer that kind of question just because and as you heard throughout this presentation, the proposals need to match and align with the call, right? So if we're calling for CO2 capture methods in an AOI, also known as an area of interest, then yeah, and again, it's going to be, the onus is on you to read carefully through the FOA once it does hit the street, and then within those areas of interest, if your research does align, then yeah, submit a proposal, and that's exactly what we're here for. But just in general, I would say, CO2 capture technologies are of interest in general to FECM, because again, at the end of the day, we're trying to decarbonize our economy as well as the electricity sector as well. So I would say in a general response, I think those technologies are relevant. But I would just say specific to the FOA that will be released, and again, we publicly put out the notice of intent earlier today. It's up to you to read those areas of interest very carefully. Okay, good question. Let's. Any other questions? And this is a good opportunity. So if you're just sitting there and you have something, you're like, oh, I don't know, should I ask or should I not? Go ahead and put it in. This is what we're here for. Okay, and hopefully everybody saw the NOI link, so we put it in the chat, Fed Connect. Again, go ahead and follow that and bookmark it. But then also, again, keep a heads up, because that's not the actual FOA. That's just a notice of intent that an FOA is forthcoming, okay? Okay, we'll pause for maybe another 60 seconds to see if anything else comes in, and if not, then we'll adjourn, but let's give it another 60 seconds. Okay, perfect. All right, so if you're typing a question, go ahead and keep typing. So we have a question that just came in. Let me read it though. Oh, good question. All right, so I'm an HBCU institution that doesn't have an engineering program. Can I still apply for grants? And I'll just leave it there. I would say yes. I mean, again, we're as long as it doesn't have to map to just engineering program. It could be a chemistry department. As long as you're able to do the research that we're calling for, you can sit and reside in any department within your institution, okay? So let me say that again. You do not have to be an engineer or be affiliated with your engineering department in order to put in a proposal. Our only benchmark or bar, so to speak, is you need to make sure that the research that you're proposing does align with the research that we're calling for. That's the main thing. And I think I forget who had the comment, but also make sure that you go through your normal channels of submitting an application on behalf of your institution. So it has to be whoever is in, I don't know, your sponsored research program or however your institution does it within your organization, but it has to be an official it's on behalf of the university. So you have to make sure you map that or route it in the proposal submission through a cognizant official at your institution. Okay.
Hey, Sydney,
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick. I mean, so
Mhm.
if the person asking the question, let's say, is a chemist, and actually they are working on a catalyst that converts, let us say, some syngas to a particular methanol, let us say, they have a novel catalyst. They're a chemist. It's a perfect place for for them to apply to this and say, we're going to develop this catalyst. There's no need of an engineering background there. It's more of a chemistry thing and how you develop that catalyst, right? So we're not, like you said, we're not restricted to the engineering department. It is to do with anything, chemistry, physics, it could be something related to not even the sciences. I mean, it could be something related to something you want to do for the environment in a different way. I mean, you found out a new technique by which you can detect leaks, maybe, I mean, so
Most
it's
definitely.
not necessarily engineering. That's the point, yeah.
No, good point, Bima. And so, like I said, just to reinforce that, as long as you're responding to the area of interest, you could be from any department, whether it be physics, chemistry, what have you. It does not have to be engineering. Okay. All right. Well, I think that I haven't seen any other questions come in. So again, I just want to say, so we're coming up at the top of the hour. I'm going to go ahead and close out our event. And again, I want to say all the thank yous again. So again, thank you to our speakers. I named them earlier, but also thank you to everybody who helped in the planning coordination of the event. And I want to say thank you to all the participants. So everybody who's hung in there with us, even all the way through to the very, very end. I want to say thank you to you, and we appreciate it. And again, if you have our contact information, if you need anything, feel free to reach out. And again, we'll go from there. I want to say thank you one last time, and you guys have a good rest of the day. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this webinar, and we'll see you guys next year.